Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to do what we do on most weekends. Look at some special selections, some songs specifically picked out from you guys out there. This one comes at us from Andrew Perrine. I'd like to request a song by my favorite band, Bats. They're an Irish band that's best described as a unique blend of hardcore disco science metal. Please check out Creatures Collecting from the album The Sleep of Reason. Thanks, Andrew. All right, so a lot of that stuff is interesting, to say the least. Let's jump into this one and see what hardcore disco science metal is about. Oh yeah, this is let's frame this better. This is not a YouTube video. I could only find a good copy of this on their Bandcamp, so let's go. Very interesting layers right here.
I've witnessed shapes in the dark. I've peered right back to the start. You wanted to reach the center. Few honor breath automatic. Iron filings rise in the mix of the fixer. Recognize a blissful elixir. You bought it, you fucking missed it. You're dead.
Yeah, these are really cool, like fills between the vocal lines.
He's just another distant brother. On the ground making sound.
So they play around with a lot of engineering stuff. You see a lot of really cool panning going on. Yeah, nice little footnote there at the end of that last line.
Collect and group towards darkness. Filings of iron to copy and mend.
Yeah, very cool to hear basically non-mixed vocals. Yes, nice rhythmic synergy there between the drums and the vocals. what a transition.
And gather, creatures collect, and the musk grows. And gather, creatures collect, and the musk grows. And gather, creatures collect, and the musk grows. And gather.
30 seconds to go, and they couldn't even end on something they've already introduced. They added yet another section. So, yeah, that pretty much sums up my ideas of bats, at least with this song. They do a lot of throwing everything out and seeing what sticks. There's so much going on, so many different sections that they've introduced from the beginning to end. It is sort of like a proggy avant-garde kind of thing. And I dig it 100%. There's so much awesome stuff going on in this track. Andrew, thanks so much for this suggestion because yeah, this is going right into that good old music folder right there. I'll have to dig into these guys some more. And I see this is from 2012 and they've had a more recent one in 2019. So I'm kind of interested to see what happened there. Let's dig into the song though. So these guys do one thing exceptionally well, and that is spatial layering. And I just came up with that term. I don't know if that's what people really call it. Maybe I should coin it. I don't know. It's like the layers are being hocketed. There's so many individual parts going on in some of these sections, and it seems more often than not there's only one or two instruments playing at a time. And usually, when another instrument comes in, even if it's only for a 2 beat phrase, another instrument will pull out for those 2 beats, creating the vacuum for this instrument to perform their section, and then they'll trade off. And it's almost like they're trading off space. This is almost like the antithesis to what we saw with Cult of Luna 2 weeks ago, where the ending of that song, it was Cygnus. The ending of that song was just so many layers filling up so much space. And this is sort of the opposite of that, where they have a lot of layers, but they continue to pull things out to put things in, almost like they're being tagged in and out of the song. There is almost there's a very surgical, methodical way of how this group composes their layering, and it creates, it's almost like a segmented feel. You never really feel like it's completely cohesive. Sounds will bounce between ears. Sometimes you'll have a full stereo effect. Sometimes what was stereo got pulled out, so you're only hearing the left, and a right side instrument is filling the space of what the stereo was doing. And then when the right side leaves, the stereo comes back in, and it's just this continuous fluctuation of stereo sound. Um, and the cool thing is, though, is you're getting all of these timbres and textures coming in all sorts of different directions at different times. It really reminds me of the concept of the Hocket, where you're getting sort of a disjointed feel of a singular idea, and I feel so much of the same emotions that I do when I listen to a Hocket that I'm getting here, even though technically every instrument is really just playing its own idea, um, and they're coming in at separate times, and the way that things are panned, and the way the instruments pull out to allow for others to come in, is giving that segmented, disjointed vibe that you usually get from a Hocket. But I don't get the feeling that all these instruments are playing a single melody line. Every instrument's got its own idea. It's just that it's so disjointed. Your melody line for each instrument might only be one or two beats out of a 2 bar phrase, or even out of a 4 bar phrase. And it's like it's just all these different sounds tagging in and out and leapfrogging over each other, none of them occupying the same space. It's all about, it's like you have space for 3 instruments, but you got 6 on hand, so you're pulling some out to put others in. It's kind of wild, and I love it. It is experimental in a way that I can't say I have a lot of experience listening to. Um, it's spatially experimental, and that's really cool. And like I said, I would call that their biggest strength. I would say that that is their most defining trait as far as I'm concerned with this specific song. Like I said, I can't really think of any time that I've heard that before, and it's really fascinating. On the other hand, though, they do very well of a job. I can't speak today. They do a very good job also of doing what modern prog does, and sort of jumping between a bunch of different sections and sort of pulling them together into more of a cohesive experience, as well as doing some phenomenal transitions. Um, so, yeah, that's definitely not something that should be overlooked with bats. There was that one transition in particular where we were playing eighth notes, and we, a couple of times throughout the song, we have seen them go into triplet feel on the fourth bar of a 4 bar phrase, or like the eighth bar of an 8 bar phrase, just to sort of put a little bit of a punch on the end of the phrase before we do the repetition, just to change it up a little bit, so that when we come back to bar one, we can really feel the difference between the end of the phrase and the beginning of the phrase. A lot of times we'll call this the drum fill section, but I don't know what to call it when the whole band does a drum fill. The way to really put the period at the end of the pattern before repeating it. So we actually saw that a couple of times, but there at the end, about the 4.5 minute mark, I think it was, the band did that. They went to their triplet feel, but when the next bar came around, we did not return to the eighth notes on the 4/4. We stuck with that triplet feel for a little bit, and that was probably one of the cleanest transitions, as far as either a tempo or I'm gonna say it was a tempo shift for a little bit. It didn't last for long. We only stuck in that section for like 4 or 8 bars or so. So, for in all intents and purposes, we probably did not change time signature or tempo at all. We just played triplets for a while, but it gave the impression of slowing down, of chugging to a crawl, through a means that we have seen before. We hit that triplet fill at the end of the 8 bars. And we're like, okay, we're gonna go back, and then no, we're gonna stay in that for a little bit. And everything sort of, I think even the instruments like dropped down, in the pitched instruments dropped down in pitch to kind of give it more of a heavy weight feel. The drums, I don't remember what I just remember feeling weightiness to it, sludginess to it. It wasn't like we entered into, a sludge section, but the feeling of the song breaking down and slowing down, due to like this heavy weight, was present. And like I said, it was delivered, it was transported to us in a vehicle that we had already seen before. This finishing up, a repetition pattern with triplets. And I just think that that delivery was extremely clean, and deserves, praise. Just be pointing out. I just want to point that out because it was done so well. They had set that up several times to the point where we're like, okay, I know where this is going, and then they take us somewhere else, and that's just, it was done so well, so good. Um, I do want to take a second to comment on the vocals. Just a lot of variety in there. We had some harshes, we had some cleans, we had some falsettos. There was some interesting engineer work. We actually heard unengineered vocals, which I thought was fantastic. It sounded like maybe they set up the microphone a few feet away, and he was speaking in a room that did not necessarily have good echo cancellation. Maybe it didn't have, your eggshell padding on the walls to dampen reverb. Whatever it there, the room had a bit of an echo to it, and it sounded like someone talk singing, however you want to go about saying that. But and it didn't have the traditional, EQ and filters on it that you would normally put on a singer. And as soon as the clean singing came back in, the bar after that, you could hear a stark difference. There's a very big difference between what singing sounds like when it's produced and what singing sounds like raw. And I just think it's just so rare to hear raw vocal tracks. You just don't hear that very often. They're tweaked somewhat. Even if it's minimally, there is going to be some tweaking on it. And like I said, it's just really cool to hear just raw, whatever was put into the microphone is what was placed there. And I think it was, pretty courageous, I'd say. I don't know if that's maybe the right word for it, but there were no instruments. It ended up feeling very sparse. The echo and the lack of any sort of engineering on it made it feel extremely vulnerable. And it's just like I said, you don't normally hear that. A lot of the Western world, at least, maybe even, well, no, I'd say the whole world. Uh, so much of the world right now, especially when you look at music, vocal tracks we're very used to produced vocal tracks. So much so that most people don't even think that there is much production to it, just because everybody sort of sounds the same as far as singing goes. There is a sound that a clean singer should sound like, and a lot of that is part of the engineering. Um, Even with live performances, it's engineered between the microphone and the speakers. So the only time you don't get that is really professional singers, if they're singing without a microphone. But even then, it's going to sound different than if it was a produced track. So yeah, like I said, it's very rare for us to hear raw vocal singing, and I think for a lot of people, they would not recognize it as good singing. Good singing, because we're so used to what it sounds like, equalized and engineered. So again, it's just you don't hear that very often. I think that's cool stuff. Even when we do hear isolated vocals, it's usually not raw like that. So I'm gonna move on. I feel like I'm just talking a lot about that. It's just that caught me off guard. I really enjoyed that. Um, so yeah, that's my take on Bats by Creatures Collecting. Uh, just heavily layered music, very interesting use of space and the way that the instruments are layered, really focusing on where they sit within the sound and making sure that nobody really overlaps on anyone. It's a really interesting composition style, and I really enjoyed it, especially with all the layers and timbres that they worked into it, creating what I call a spatial hocket. It was like spatial tag as far as what instruments were playing when. Yeah, really cool work. This is where you guys come in though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of Bats' Creature Collecting off of the Sleep of Reason album. Let me know if you enjoyed it, if you didn't enjoy it, if there's anything that stood out to you that maybe I didn't necessarily touch on. Let me know in the comments. Above that's a description box if you'd like to check out any links adjacent to the channel, such as the Patreon campaign or the Discord server. Speaking of the Discord server, we are halfway through February. So that is half of the time for the composition jam to be over. If you're still interested in it though, it is not too late. 15 days is more than enough to work on a quick remix or cover, which is the theme. If you're interested in that, all the stems are available. I put a link to that in the Discord. Just join the Discord server. Links in the description, like I said, and go to the composition jam chat room, and there's all sorts of information in there. It's real simple. I got software if you're new to it to get you set up, and yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. I don't ever know how to segue out of that stuff. It's just like an abrupt cut. We're doing it between the bear to me style. You should join the Discord server. I'll be back tomorrow. Just like no segue there. Just moving from one idea to the next. I don't know what I said. I meant to say between the bear to me, but I think I might have said bring me the horizon. Between the bear to me style. No segues, just just jump between two ideas. So yeah, I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC with yet another special selection. Before we move into next week's What Genre Is This? Which I think is going to be a pretty cool theme. I'm hoping to see a bunch of variety in the 5 songs we check out, as well as just listening to some really interesting combinations of things and maybe moving into some experimental ideas. So, yeah, that wraps this one up, though. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to. And have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.